Hi everyone, doing a recap from our recent meeting that we had around smart and sharing communities. There's a lot of people that are on this thread that maybe are not aware of some of our beginning and some of our focuses. And I know as a group, Justin Sweeney took us through what it means to be a community of practice and looking at that model and things like that. And I thought that was a great recap. We find ourselves as a group in this storm phase. So we'll do a little bit of a recap, long-term vision, what was the reason for getting together. We're going to keep this video to 5 minutes, at least under 6 minutes, and we'll answer any questions that people have afterwards through email. So let's get into it. So the focus for this group was galvanizing this group and narrowing in the community, or sorry, narrowing in on the focus. So Justin did that, helped us with a model to work from. And as I said, we find ourselves in this storm phase where we're really trying to figure out where are the gaps, what are the things problems we're trying to solve. And then from there, we were picking up on a few items that we brought forward in the last meeting where we go after some of these short-term goals like mapping with Startup Canada, and Doug actually gave us a good overview on where they're at with that. And then we were, of course, going to look forward to Tom's visit. We actually spent very little time on this in the meeting, but I think we did a really good job at hammering out where we all, as people in this community of social entrepreneurs, innovators, community developers, whatever we are, looking at this for-profit social enterprise model. What are the boundaries we have? So we had a lot of conversation there. So why are we meeting again? Well, there's a number of different starting points for this, but a major reason is that I called people together who I deemed were in this fight to try to find social entrepreneurs, startups, to reinvigorate not just our business world, but our social world, to build social infrastructure here in New Brunswick. So this was my attempt to try to develop something local, trying to solve local problems, but I realized that it has to get much bigger than that. It has to go much broader. It has to include others from different cities and different groups and organizations who are also in the fight. So we'll go on to the next slide here and take a peek at some of those reasons and some of those goals. So this is the goal right here. We need to find 20 new risk takers who want to start new innovative businesses and for-profit social enterprises to address problems they see in their community. This is something I'm not alone in. This is not something that is, I guess, new to people who would be in this thread, but I would say that there's a lot of fragmentation, and we're going to take a peek at that right now. So if we're going to find 20 people in hopefully 20 different communities in this province who want to take on something that maybe isn't going to be a hyper-growth business, because I personally don't believe that hyper-growth businesses are the thing that's going to change the world, but it's small, with lots of skin in the game attempts to address problems and to develop models around that, some of which will probably be businesses. So we have to be talking together. So to address that fragmentation, we're just going to take a peek here. So to find those 20, look for ideas. And this is where we looked at the sharing economy, and I mean sharing economy in a more pure fashion, like Tom Lulewin has been talking with us about, and who's, I guess we're trying to get up here in April, May, to do a bit of a longer session over 2 days with people who are actively in this fight, trying to develop social infrastructure, businesses, and new paradigms for New Brunswick to be in. So, of course, the sharing economy is affecting everything. It is actively disrupting everything. It is moving us from an old paradigm, which was very inefficient, to a very efficient paradigm. We see that with lots of different things, whether it be cloud technology, data sharing, whether it be environmentalism, transportation, and food security. So we have groups in this province like Enterprise St. John, the Venn Garage, Startup Canada, the Planet Hatch, who are giving us a good, I guess, even in innovative ways of starting businesses. Looking at the cash flow, so, of course we're looking here, but, also looking at good practices organizationally. But we also have some serious social problems in our communities. So we've got rundown housing here in St. John. We've got lots of unemployment, and I know we're not alone in that. Every community has their own unique issue, and so nonprofits just aren't necessarily the way that's going to change it. Every year, Canada Helps, which is like a national-wide group that helps donors fund different nonprofits, would say that there's fewer and fewer donors, there's more and more nonprofits and charities, and they are more and more going after foundation money. And so there just isn't enough donors there, and people are largely disenchanted with nonprofits because they often don't see the impact. They don't see the needle moving on the issues. And so we also have groups in this province like the Pond Deshpande Center, Be for Change, the VIL, the Community Loan Fund, New Lab, and I could go on to list a bunch more, some of which I've been very influenced by and I have a great appreciation for, that are trying to get us around this idea of social innovation and impact. And this is where I say our group comes in, is we are going to be the ones to bridge that group. At least in our St. John area, if that's all it ever becomes, that's worth it. But I'd love to see it as a provincial thing where these groups have a venue to come together to look at these new practices and innovative methods. Bring the best lessons of both, find a way through the barriers, produce a new kind of entrepreneur culture in NB, and solve our... So if our goal is reaching that 20, then we have to start now. And we have to kind of work backwards from that end point. And I would say that's a very noble end point, to have 20 people in 20 different communities or a number of communities who are actively taking on new ideas, innovative practices to solve problems. So what does that mean? Well, it means getting on some sort of track of connecting with one another to fill that breach or that gap and that barrier that we have right now toward one another, toward those two groups that are in that fight. So here's a way forward, or a thought. January, jump in with Startup SJ and Enterprise St. John's efforts in digital mapping. Now, they're not the only ones doing this, and I think it's a whole Startup New Brunswick thing. It's definitely a Startup Canada movement. I know that in my own world, having connected with the civic tech groups and that which is rolling out, they highly recommend asset mapping as a beautiful starting point for new community connection efforts, and really does increase the level of efficiency on that front, which is important. So if we can start there, it's a great spot that's been tried and practiced, and it is something Tom suggested. January to March, build that coalition, figure out who should be there, understanding that connection is king. March, nail down that weekend for Tom's Fitness. And again, if you don't know who Tom is, he's a director with shareable.net. He's giving an address at the Barcelona World Summit on sharing communities. He's got a lot of really interesting things to say on this, and he's helped a lot of other groups in this starting point and on this venture to figure out where to go forward, what's unique and specific to them. And there's some prices in there. We got to get his flight and $2,000 to get him up here for 4 days. And then March, April, we got to work on promoting the event. Get those 50 to 100 people together for this intensive, to bring those two groups closer and onto a more of a dialogue. And Tom would leave Monday or Tuesday, so it'd be Friday, Saturday for the intensive, and so other organizations potentially could benefit from his stay. So there's real potential there too for him to impact that. So this is it. I know I went a little over. It's 8 minutes and 30 seconds of video here. So I'd love to hear back from everybody. And again, I really think this is a worthwhile venture. I don't see these two groups talking very much as it is, and so I think it's an important thing to fix. Look forward to hearing from everybody.